A spine. Window glows before the creature moves. A tall faceless adult stands with its back turned to the vertical pressure light. Its head is sealed and blank, its side limbs hang thin and useless beside a narrow body. Down the center of its back runs a transparent spine, panel tall as a window and pale as bone under pressure. Behind that window, the young are visible. They are curled behind the spine, not inside a belly, not inside an egg, not hidden in a pouch. Their pale bodies press against the glass, like bone from within, stacked along the adult's back in a vertical brood chamber. When the adult breathes, the young shift. When the adult straightens, they stop. One juvenile near the middle has stopped moving. The others react to the pressure light, twitching faintly behind the transparent panel. But this one remains curled, pale, and still. Trapped inside a broken section of the incubation wall behind the adult's spine. At first, the spine window looks like armor. That is the first false reading. The tall alien stands in front of cracked translucent panels, its back glowing like a shield. The vertical window catches every line of white light and reflects it across the broken incubation wall. The transparent bone looks hard, protective, decorative. Then the adult bends, the whole body folds forward with painful slowness. The sealed head drops, the thin side limbs pull inward. The transparent spine window tightens along the back, and the curled young behind it are compressed against the inner surface. The stopped juvenile moves, solemnly, a little. A pale curl flexes behind the bone window. A small shape presses outward, then slips back into stillness. The adult holds the bend longer. Dust drifts through the broken wall behind it. Vertical pressure light sharpens along the transparent spine, making every curled body inside the window readable. This is not armor, it is not a display spine. It is not a normal skeleton made visible through skin. The bone window brood carries its young behind the external spine. Growth happens through posture. The adult's bending compresses the transparent spine window, and that pressure forces the young through their next stage of development. If the adult stays upright too long, the brood stops. If the adult bends too far, the spine cracks. The failed juvenile has already stopped once. The adult straightens. The window releases pressure. Most of the young shift back. The failed one does not. Its curled body remains pressed against a cloudy fracture line inside the spine panel. The transparent bone around it flickers under the vertical light, and a thin crack appears along the edge of the window. The adult bends again. This time the motion is harder. The sealed head lowers almost to the chest. The narrow back arches. The spine window compresses the brood chamber from top to bottom. Several curled young press outward at once, flattening against the transparent surface like pale shapes trapped behind glass. The failed juvenile twitches. The adult spine cracks not the window alone, the living bone around it. A thin dark line opens along one side of the transparent panel. The adult does not break open, but the cost becomes visible. Every bend that restarts the brood also damages the body holding them. The broken incubation wall behind the creature reacts to the motion. Cracked translucent panels pulse with vertical white pressure light. Dust drifts down in slow columns. Shadow lines on the wall align with the spine window, making the adult's back look like part of the room's broken machinery, but the wall is only pressure and reflection. The real mechanism is the adult's posture. The adult stays bent. The young behind the spine begin to move in sequence. One curl tightens. Another opens slightly. A third presses its face, like shape against the inner bone window and withdraws. The failed juvenile responds last. It uncurls by a fraction, then stops again, pale and compressed inside the damaged section. The adult tries to rise. The transparent spine window releases. The young settle back. the failed juvenile begins to fade into stillness, the adult bends before fully straightening. The movement is almost a collapse. The side limbs tremble, the sealed head dips, the cracked bone edge along the spine, window widens and the transparent panel bows inward toward the brood chamber. The failed juvenile is compressed directly against the cracked section, this time it moves clearly. A small pale limb unfolds behind the window, a curled body rotates, something like an eye. Shape forms under the transparent bone, not an earth eye, not a familiar face, but a pressure-sensitive oval swelling toward the light. The adult's body shudders, the spine, window flashes bright, the crack lengthens, the young behind the panel respond. As if the fracture itself is a signal, several bodies press outward at once. The transparent spine becomes a vertical nursery under stress, filled with trapped growth and damaged pressure. The adult is saving the brood by injuring the structure that holds them. For a moment, the failed juvenile moves with the others. Then the adult loses strength, it rises halfway and freezes. The pressure on the window drops too soon. The young behind the spine slow again. The broken incubation wall casts long vertical shadows across the adult's back, and those shadows match the crack lines in the transparent bone. The creature bends one final time. It does not look like feeding. It does not look like defense. It looks like a body using its own back as a broken machine. The sealed head drops, the side limbs draw tight, the spine, window compresses from top to bottom, bone edges along the panel split wider, and the adult holds itself there while the failed juvenile presses outward. The eye shape appears again, opens behind the transparent spine, window, the adult's back cracks across the edge of the panel. The brood moves, not all of them, not safely, not without cost, but the failed juvenile is no longer still. It presses against the bone. Window, with the others, pale and curled, and alive behind the spine. The adult remains bent under the vertical pressure light. The broken wall glows behind it. Dust drifts around the cracked panels. The final image is not a birth and not a wound. It is a tall faceless brood creature trapped in a posture it cannot escape. Its transparent spine, window full of young, one revived juvenile pressing outward from behind the cracked bone. Its spine was never just bone. It was the nursery window.